Kalshi facing scrutiny over Trump Jr.'s $300,000 share gift. Now, a little bit of background information for those who aren't familiar with what Kalshi is and the whole Don Jr. situation surrounding it. Kalshi is the very popular prediction gambling market or prediction betting market. They allow you to bet on basically anything. They famously had big bets on whoever was going to win the presidential election. And you had a number of very prominent public figures openly betting and telling who they're betting for and how much they're betting on. You can bet on sports. You can bet on all sorts of random things too. Like, is Donald Trump going to say the word pancakes in his State of the Union address or something like that? Well, Donald Trump Jr. was given a job at Kalshi as a strategic advisor on January 13th of 2025, literally 1 week before, on January 20th of 2025, Donald Trump was inaugurated for his second presidential term. So you naturally may ask yourself, what is Donald Trump Jr.'s qualification to be a strategic advisor for Kalshi? Oh, of course, it's because Trump is his last name, right? It's not a coincidence that this sort of thing happens literally a week before the inauguration of Trump, okay? This would look fishy if it happened during the Biden administration after Trump's first term and before his second one, okay? But it wouldn't look quite as fishy. This looks extremely fishy, okay? Clearly, they're doing this to try and curry favor with the Trump administration and how they're going to regulatorily manage Kalshi as a betting gambling site. Now, to anybody who's been paying attention over the last couple of years, this feels oddly familiar. What does this feel familiar to? Oh, right, the whole Hunter Biden Burisma scandal. What was the Hunter Biden Burisma scandal, you ask? You've been living under a rock? Well, let me tell you. Republicans made a huge hubbub over the last however many years over Hunter Biden being a non-executive board member, essentially acting as a consultant or providing business guidance to the natural gas producer Burisma Holdings in Ukraine. Now, this happened at the exact same time that Joe Biden was vice president to Obama in 2014. Hunter Biden served on this board of directors from 2014 to 2019. Now, people were all upset, I guess across the spectrum, but especially conservatives. They were the ones making a ton of noise about all of this, that this is pure corruption, that because the United States has various different kinds of deals and military agreements with Ukraine, that this is clearly them trying to curry favor with the vice president who basically has no power. But that indirectly, this is to try and get favor from Obama and the Democrats in terms of deal making, and that he was mostly unqualified for this sort of position. Now, the similarity seems very, very clear, right? They seem to have a pretty similar amount of qualification that Don Jr. has for Kalshi and that Hunter Biden had for sitting on the board of directors of Burisma. But I would argue that the example of Don Jr. sitting on the board of Kalshi is even worse because this isn't just an indirect way to curry favor, all right? Burisma is a Ukrainian company that the U.S. may indirectly have some way of having policy changes that could positively impact them as a company, as an entity. Kalshi is an American company that does a tremendous amount of American business, that has a lot of economic weight to throw around and a surprising amount of political influence, and a number of different scandals and lawsuits and regulatory oversight challenges because of the fact that they're essentially a betting company, a gambling company, which in many places around the country is overtly illegal, and that they sort of skirt the rules around that in a number of different ways. But yeah, my point is that anybody who is seriously upset about Hunter Biden and Burisma because of the appearance of corruption, even though no direct link was ever made between policies changed or made by the Obama administration that would have positively benefited Burisma, that it was all corruption and that there's no good reason Hunter Biden should be sitting on that board or whatever. They should be furious. They should be over the moon about Donald Trump Jr. sitting on the board of Kalshi, because this is an even more egregious, clear example of trying to curry favor with the Trump administration by directly hiring the son of the president of the United States, right? He's actually the true president of the United States. Obviously, Donald Trump is, while Joe Biden was just the vice president. So yeah, if you're being, objective about all of this, if your anger over the Hunter Biden Burisma situation was actually based out of principle, you should be even more upset about Donald Trump Jr. sitting on the board of Kalshi. In reality, that's not the case. And the reason is because the vast majority of people that you would find bringing up Hunter Biden and Burisma in a political conversation are not really doing so out of a principled position. They're doing so because it's a partisan talking point. They're doing so because they're trying to get a leg up in a debate or an argument or something like that. And that they seem to only be interested in the appearance of corruption when it comes on the liberal Democrat side of American politics, and not so much on the Republican conservative side of things. And I would argue, if corruption is your big thing, right, it's just not if that was one of the things you talked about most and one of the things that you came to in a political discussion a lot of the times, right, you're probably not coming at corruption from a super objective position, because there's plenty of bigger examples of corruption going on in the government and the dealings of the United States that are worth talking about, that are bigger than the Hunter Biden sitting on the board of directors of Burisma in Ukraine. Prediction market operator Kalshi is facing fresh scrutiny after reports revealed details of compensation paid to President Donald Trump's eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., in the form of about $300,000 worth of shares after he was handed a job at the company, according to the Financial Times. The report alleged that Trump Jr. was awarded the shares at Kalshi after becoming a strategic advisor to the company in early 2025. At the time of the reported award, Kalshi's valuation was below $2 billion, but it has risen substantially since then, perhaps as high as $22 billion, based on reports of last month's funding round. According to the Financial Times, Trump Jr.'s holdings could further increase if Kalshi completes another fundraising round for a reported valuation of around $40 billion, which could happen later this year. The eldest Trump son also joined the advisory board of rival prediction market operator Polymarket in 2024. Yeah, in any other context, the idea that you would sit on the board of directors or be an advisor for both companies at the same time would be a complete non-starter, okay? All of these companies have conditions and clauses in their contracts for employment that, like, you can't go work for our competitors. That's very standard basically in every industry, especially ones as big as this one. Why would they be doing this sort of thing? Well, because they can. Because this is very clearly Polymarket and Kalshi trying to curry favor with the administration, especially when it comes to regulations, because there was a number of different lawsuits and regulations potentially in place that could hurt their business, that could be removed, that would significantly help their business, or maybe in the works to being implemented that could harm their business. Kalshi, in particular, has benefited from several regulatory decisions over the past few months, particularly those issued by Trump-backed agencies. Before the 2024 election, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, sought to block Kalshi's election-related event contracts, but the group secured a court victory before Election Day. The CFTC ultimately dropped its appeal in May 2025. Now, you obviously can't prove that dropping this appeal was a direct result of the favor that was curried by hiring Donald Trump Jr. as a strategic advisor, but it certainly looks bad. This is a bigger, more damning thing to the corruption that could potentially be happening by Donald Trump Jr. being a strategic advisor to Kalshi and Polymarket than any evidence that any favorable dealings occurred between the Obama administration and Burisma regarding Hunter Biden, sitting on the board of directors. Polymarket has also benefited from certain regulatory decisions, with the CFTC and Department of Justice closing an investigation last year into whether the operator accepted illegal wagers from U.S. customers despite being banned. Now, it certainly fits with the ethos of this administration and Republicans in general to want to let Kalshi and Polymarket kind of just do whatever they want, right? I remember when it used to be a pillar of the Republican Party to be like anti-gambling. That used to be something that they pushed for, but it seems like the more time has gone on, the more libertarianism and libertarian ideology has sort of infiltrated its way into Republican thinking, that they're kind of more or less in favor of these kind of things and letting businesses, regardless of what kind of business it is, besides sex work and abortion clinics and whatnot, do whatever the hell they want. So yeah, if Kalshi was only valued at about $2 billion at the time that he received this $300,000 worth of shares, and then assuming that he still holds on to most of those shares, that the valuation of the company has more than tenfold increased, that $300,000 is really more like $3 million and could be as high as potentially almost $6 million if the $40 billion valuation target is hit next year. So yeah, the whole point about this is, like, if you're seriously interested in corruption from a principled, objective position, and you were all upset about Burisma and the appearance of corruption that could potentially be there when Obama was in office and Joe Biden was vice president, and Hunter Biden was sitting on the board of directors of Burisma Holdings in Ukraine, which is a natural gas producer, then you should be over the moon, even more upset about this situation, about Donald Trump Jr. acting as a strategic advisor for Kalshi and Polymarket at the same time that a whole bunch of different regulatory lawsuits and conflicts are ongoing. So yeah, the unfortunate reality is that I think most of the people who were regularly talking about the Hunter Biden Burisma story over the last couple of years are not really doing so out of like a principled objection to corruption, and that they aren't really going to be mentioning this at all because it doesn't fit their narrative, because they weren't really interested in corruption from a principled perspective before. They were really only interested in it whenever it helps their side in a partisan way, whenever it happens on the Democrat and the liberal side, and they can trot it out as a way to try and present the Democrats as corrupt and the Republicans as upstanding political actors, but are going to ignore it whenever it happens on their side. So